I have a question I'd like to pose to everybody. We all know about the UFOs lately and the phenomenons of it, and we'll get into that a little bit. And one of the more interesting ones we'll show. Uh, but I want to ask this question. Is the UFO mystery that we're seeing solved by looking at John chapter 20, verses 19 to 29? And there's nothing like this in the regular gospel accounts. So this is unique to John. So I'm going to say this to you. It was, if, and I believe this really happened, right? But it is very, very strange. And this is maybe too strange for even the apostles to understand how this could have happened. So in John 20, verses 19 to 29, it begins, and this is a sort of the Bible.com has something called the CEV, and it's a kind of a loose, good paraphrase, but a loose version. But it says some things that are helpful here. The disciples were afraid of the Jewish leaders, and on the evening of that same Sunday, they locked themselves in a room. So Jesus has been crucified; he's not ascended yet, uh, and they're not always with him. So there was times when they're not with him. Suddenly, Jesus appeared in the middle of the group. He greeted them and showed them his hands and his side. So we're to understand he's a physical being. He's not a disembodied spirit. When the disciples saw the Lord, they became happy. And this is how the rest of it reads in this same. This is a paraphrase, the CEV version, and you'll see the same pattern is going to happen again, but this time with Thomas. So it's going to be another situation where they're alone, and in a minute they're going to be alone, and they're going to have Jesus appear again the same way. But here's how that first encounter is going to finish. After Jesus had greeted them again, he said, "I am sending you just as the Father has sent me." Then he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they will be forgiven. But if you don't forgive their sins, they will not be forgiven." Although Thomas, the twin, was one of the 12 disciples, he wasn't with the others when Jesus appeared to them. So I always want to, a bit Bible question is to always ask, did Thomas ever receive the Holy Spirit? Because he wasn't there the first time, but just a joke. Obviously he did at some point. So they told him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas said, "First, I must see the nail scars in his hands and touch them with my finger. I must put my hand where the spear went into his side. I won't believe unless I do this." Okay, so this is someone says, I have to have physical proof before I believe anything. Because it seems crazy, doesn't it? I mean, how could someone appear in a locked room? A locked room. This is like a murder mystery show. A week later, the disciples were together again. This time, Thomas was with them. Jesus came in while the doors were still locked and stood in the middle of the group. He greeted his disciples and said, "Thomas, put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into my side. Stop doubting and have faith." Okay, so Jesus has appeared twice inside of a locked room. And suddenly, how does this happen? How would you explain this? Now, of course, uh, he could just be teleported there. But there's another more obvious way to understand it. And I want to now play for you a video about how dimensions appear to people who, like a little ant, can't see a third dimension. It only sees the ground level it's on. It can't see heights and so on the way others do, at least in the way that deGrasse Tyson tries to explain it. So let's watch his video. It's short, it's 3.5 minutes, and I think it'll give you a very good grasp of what's going on here. And then I'm going to show you how this fits into the UFO phenomenon.
I'm at my desk, and the desk is a surface, okay? And I start putting pages down on the desk. I'm tiling them on the desk. And then I run out of room. I've exhausted the 2 dimensions of the surface of my desk. We have ways of accommodating this problem. And so we have page organizers that go upwards. So now when I don't have any more surface area of the desk, I can enter a 3rd dimension and put pages there. If you are an ant, embedded in this two-dimensional world of the surface of my desk, and you fill up the desk with these sheets of paper, the ant will say, there is no more room. And I say, yes, there is. Watch me. And I take a piece of paper off the desk, put it in the page organizer, and according to the ant that's embedded in the two dimensions, that page disappeared. It disappeared into a dimension that ant does not have access to. What a brilliant invention this is. You can put practically an unlimited number of pages, far more pages above the desk than on the desk. So access to a third dimension is an extraordinarily useful storage device. Watch what happens next. I now have my three-dimensional room, and I'm filling it with boxes. Now I've run out of space to put the boxes. But now a four-dimensional alien looks at us and says, I got this. Just move it into the fourth dimension. What are you talking about? And the alien comes in, reaches in, takes one of the boxes, and then the box disappears. Disappears. It went into a fourth dimension. So imagine a new storage system where you just go to Home Depot and buy a door. And that door is your portal to a fourth dimension. You open the door, put your boxes, close the door, and you look on the other side of the door, there's nothing there. So this is what's going on when you have access to higher dimensions. Now, there are things that happen in quantum physics that kind of defy our sensibilities. Like particles pop in and out of existence. They defy any rational attempt to understand it. Particles can be entangled with one another. A particle can be here, and there's a barrier, and it can spontaneously show up on the other side of the barrier at faster than the speed of light. All of this is just mysterious. So, who is to say that some of the mysterious things we are describing accurately, but don't otherwise make sense in a higher dimension? And these are just the manifestations of higher dimensional phenomena in our world. And that's an aspect of what these higher dimensional physicists are trying to establish.
Okay, so in that video, we saw that Neil deGrasse Tyson was explaining that an extra dimension is how we can understand what they call quantum mechanical effects in our world. And one of those quantum mechanical effects in our world is plants. So having an extra dimension can explain why plants work the way they do. And so I'm going to show you what it is he's saying extra dimensions help explain plants, help explain quantum mechanical effects, which includes primarily, or the first thing that was ever discovered like this is plants. And I should actually say more specifically, it's the chlorophyll molecule in bacteria and plants. So it exists in bacteria, not only plants. So, and it's essential to life. So had the chlorophyll molecule not existed, life could never have existed. So the very life of plants and bacteria would never have been able to sustain themselves unless they had this chlorophyll molecule with these abilities to exploit a quantum mechanical effect on Earth. And just quickly, what that is you literally have to have a quantum computer inside of plants to do this. And yes, you're going to laugh, and you're going to see the scientists said the same thing when all scientists said the same thing when this was first discussed by the scientists who discovered this, and they were laughed and ridiculed until they proved it. And it's been proven over and over and over and over again. No test has failed. There's some dissenters who still don't want to go along, and we'll show you. This is a little video we're going to have. But it's invariably been proven that plants get a 90, or anything that uses a chlorophyll molecule achieves a 97% plus efficiency of converting every photon of energy from the sun into energy usable by the plant or by the bacteria. So it's an amazing molecule. And without that level of efficiency, it wouldn't work. And in order to do this, it has to exploit basically that particle, that photon that comes in, instead of it being assigned to, a box, go over here to receptor stage 0, 1 and see how much the energy can get out of you. When it fails, it can't do it anymore. We don't know what to do with you, so we have to throw you away. That's how inefficient is in a solar cell system works in our world. So we just have one solar cell for the photons, and if it doesn't work, we give it up. But what a plant does is it uses quantum superimposition, and that sounds like a big word, but basically it as if it's in another dimension of space and time, not following our laws of physics. That photon can be in multiple places at the same time. So let's say there's 50 receptor cells in a certain area, and each one of them is efficient enough to get a little bit of energy out of a photon, but not all of it. So instead of discarding it, what it does is it says, here's the photon that comes in, and we're going to put it in all 50 places simultaneously, and it will be able to be drained out 100%, virtually 100%, and get 100% efficiency virtually. And so this is what is happening, and this is called a quantum computer. So but it doesn't follow our law of physics, and that's why they're calling it quantum physics. So it doesn't follow the physics of our universe that we know of, but it's exposing to us that there is another universe that we're like the ant. The ant probably, if it looked up in that video that Tyson was showing you, if it looked up, it could see there's 3 dimensions, but, it really keeps its head down on the ground because it doesn't need to look up. It can't exploit a 3-dimensional world because it can't lift things, and use that 3rd dimension. It's really outside the ability of the ant to use. So we don't actually access this dimension, although we're scientifically trying to. But that's how we're connected to this other dimension that doesn't follow our rules, that a physical object can't be in more than one place at one time. In a quantum physical world, it can be, and it is, and that's how that's how it efficiently drains a single photon of all of its energy by putting it in multiple places at the same identical time, and uses what's called a kind of a wave. And you'll see it's in this video that we're going to show you. So chlorophyll molecule uses quantum processes contrary to our law of normal physics on this side of the dimensions, if you will. But inside of that world that we're going to explore in this video, you're going to see a totally different effect by different means that don't operate in our universe that we're familiar with. But in this other quantum physical universe, it does operate. All right, so the chlorophyll molecule takes a single photon of light and puts it in multiple energy receptacles simultaneously. The chlorophyll molecule extracts from a single photon of light from the sun 97% plus versus normally 15 to 20% conversion in our solar panels. And I just want to show you a little article on that. 15 to 20% conversion. Where do I have that? Here we go. PV conversion efficiency is the percentage of incident solar energy that is converted to electricity. Though most commercial panels have efficiencies from 15 to 20%, researchers have developed PV cells with efficiencies approaching 50%. So they're getting better. But to get to that magic number of 100%, which was essential for life, or virtual 100%, you need something like a quantum computer. But basically, that's the barrier. And how do you overcome that? You need an extra dimension to exploit all the energy possible to get that energy out of it. So now let's watch a video where this is explained, and it's using layman's language and using little cartoons, and so they try to make it as simple as possible. So I'm going to play the whole thing. It's about 9 minutes, and it's fun. And if you think about it, you're actually witnessing science confronting, if you ask me, the intervention of God in our universe, creating a whole different set of rules of physics that don't apply outside of the quantum world. And that's when you hear quantum biology, it's to explain this whole other area that doesn't make sense, doesn't fit our paradigms that quote evolution had to occur by some slow, gradual process. Well, let me tell you that chlorophyll doesn't evolve. It's an extremely complex molecule. And think about it, if life doesn't exist without the chlorophyll molecule, and the chlorophyll molecule can only evolve over a long period of time, theoretically, life could never have come into existence by any gradual means. It would always need the chlorophyll molecule. Otherwise, life will always die out well before it could ever replicate and get to the point of replication. So the chlorophyll molecule is the most important way of refuting the whole notion of evolution, because it's impossible without chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is an extremely complex molecule. Doesn't come about by you can't create in other words, you can't create a quantum computer by a lightning strike. Okay, it's just not going to happen. You're going to see in this video, laboratories are made to do quantum. They try to do quantum mechanical effects on Earth in experimental things, but they have to change the temperature down. They have to get clean rooms. They have to do all this stuff to try to get to the barest effort to get access the quantum physical world and do experiments within that. That's how much effort they have to put into get there. And we have to believe that kind of laboratory that we set up on Earth was happening by accident in the original Earth. So there's multiple benefits to this. But again, this is going to explain when Jesus shows up in that room the way he did with the apostles, how could he do that? Because he can step across the barrier between our physical universe and the physical universe that even plants are accessing on a minute by minute, hour by hour, plants and bacteria, certain bacteria. Plants and bacteria are accessing this constantly, this access to this other dimension. So let's go and take a listen to this video.
Are there biological processes which need quantum mechanics to work? Now, this question is surprising for a couple of reasons. Quantum processes generally need very specific conditions to work. When physicists explore quantum effects, they work in pristine conditions, usually at temperatures of near absolute zero, with very expensive equipment, in complete isolation. So it seems odd that these same processes take place in the hot, wet, messy world of life. But experiments over the past decade have shown mounting evidence that this is, in fact, the case. Quantum biology is also interesting because it brings together physicists and biologists. A friend of mine, Pat Kelly, who runs the biology channel called Corporis, actually came to me with this idea. Together, we've crafted a 3-part mini-series which explores different instances of quantum biology. This first episode is about how plants may use quantum mechanics to perform perhaps the most important biological process on Earth, photosynthesis. On Pat's channel, we talk about how the engines that run our bodies, enzymes, may use a process called quantum tunneling. And finally, in the third episode, we talk about my favorite phenomenon, how some birds may use quantum entanglement to navigate the globe. So then, let's get started. How some plants may use quantum mechanics. The story starts in April 2007, where a group of MIT physicists were sharing science articles they'd found that week. One of the articles was suggesting that plants were mini quantum computers. The group exploded into laughter. The world's brightest minds had been trying to create a quantum computer for decades, and now it was being suggested that some dumb plant had outsmarted them. But as we'll soon see, they were foolish to laugh. First, let's talk about why someone would even make that claim. Plants as quantum computers, it does sound a bit far-fetched. Well, to understand this, we first need to understand a very old puzzle in biology. Why is photosynthesis so efficient? Pat can explain this much better than I can, so I'm going to let him handle it.
Life on Earth is only possible because of photosynthesis. You've heard of this phenomenon before. It's the synthesis of energy out of light, or photons. Trees do it, green algae do it, all kinds of plants do it all the time to produce over 15,000 tons of biomass every second. And even on such a big scale, photosynthesis comes down to just a chemical reaction. A plant or green algae takes carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight and turns those ingredients into sugar, oxygen, and usable energy for the organism itself. Sunlight, along with the whole process of photosynthesis, happens in an organelle within plant cells called chloroplasts. Inside the chloroplast are stacks of discs called thylakoids that are filled with little green pigments called chlorophyll. To understand how sunlight goes from a photon to usable energy, we need a little background on the chemistry of chlorophyll. These molecules have a long carbon and oxygen backbone, with a big grid of carbon and nitrogen surrounding a lone magnesium atom. This makes it so magnesium has a single electron in its outermost layer that's just barely hanging in there. So when a photon comes into the thylakoid, its energy knocks that electron off the magnesium. Here's where things get a little abstract. Usually we'd think of that magnesium ion, as a whole, as positively charged. It just lost an electron. But for all this to make sense, we need to reframe it a little bit. Think of it more like a neutral magnesium, a negative electron, and a positively charged hole where the electron used to be. This is called an exciton, and it can store energy. Those negative and positive poles make it work like a battery. But in order to make energy out of sunlight, the plant needs to get that exciton to a reaction center for a process called charge separation. This involves taking the electron from magnesium and transferring it to some nearby molecule so it can create a stable molecule. From there, the chemical process of photosynthesis can happen. But transferring that exciton is the hard part. Chloroplasts can transfer energy from chlorophyll to chlorophyll until it gets to a reaction center, but that might be really far away. Plus, chlorophyll are packed together super densely, so how does the exciton know which way to go? For years, we thought it randomly stepped from molecule to molecule until it landed at a reaction center, but if that were the case, the excitons were more likely to get lost than to perform photosynthesis. And that was kind of a problem, because in the real world, photosynthesis happens with nearly 100% efficiency. Almost 0 electrons ever get lost. That's more efficient than any human technology we've ever come up with. Plus, classical chemistry couldn't explain how such an efficient process was possible.
This is a long-standing puzzle in biology, and the article that the MIT physicists were all laughing at was suggesting that plants use quantum mechanical effects to get around this. See, one of the main ideas in quantum mechanics is called superposition, and it's the idea that a particle can be in more than one place at a time. In the macroscopic world we're accustomed to, if something is in one spot, it definitely can't be in any other spot. But in the quantum world, things aren't so straightforward. A single particle can simultaneously exist in many different places with different probabilities. It's kind of like if you have a hedgehog in a box and you have to guess where it is. You might say there's a 70% chance it's where the food is, a 20% chance it's on the bed, and a 10% chance it's on the treadmill. These probabilities represent the likelihood of finding the hedgehog when you take a look. But the thing is, the hedgehog isn't really in all of these places. It's only in one. You just don't know which. But quantum particles are different. Before they're measured, they really are in all places at once with different probabilities. We can view these probabilities as a spread out wave. At every point in space, there's a different probability of finding the particle there. An important point is this probability wave only remains intact before it's detected. As soon as it's measured, it collapses into a single particle at one location. Yeah, there's a reason quantum mechanics has a reputation for being weird. Now, this idea of being in many places at once can be extended to taking many paths at once. If a particle reaches a fork in the road, it doesn't need to choose. It can take both. If it's presented with many paths, it can take all of them, like a wave spreading out over space. This is exactly what the paper was proposing, that the exciton takes all possible paths to the reaction center, and that's how it gets there so quickly. This explanation actually kind of makes sense when you think about it. So why were all the quantum physicists laughing their heads off? Well, the biggest enemy of all quantum processes is something called decoherence. Remember how we talked about how the superposition only lasts until a particle is measured? Well, in quantum talk, measured doesn't mean the same thing that it means in everyday language. Here, measured means when this wave particle comes into contact with anything else, like another particle, a molecule, anything. When it's in this wave state, it's said to be in a state of coherence. When it's broken or measured, this is decoherence. Decoherence is the reason physicists need to work in such specific conditions when they're dealing with quantum mechanical effects. In the macroscopic world we're used to, there are so many particles and molecules bouncing around, so much jostling and wiggling due to the heat, that coherence doesn't last long enough to be detected. This is why we don't see quantum mechanical effects in our day-to-day lives. It's also one of the main struggles with the creation of quantum computers. Physicists come up with all kinds of clever and expensive ways to shield their precious particles from the evils of the outside world, cooling them to near absolute zero temperatures and attempting to keep them in complete isolation. But so far, nothing has worked to keep decoherence at bay. And now this paper was suggesting that plants could ward off decoherence at normal temperatures and conditions? It didn't make sense. The MIT physicists sent one of their members, Seth Lloyd, to investigate this claim. What he came back with surprised everyone. Let's take a look at this paper which caused such a stir. An experiment was performed at the University of California, Berkeley, using a technique with the very impressive name of two-dimensional Fourier transform electron spectroscopy. The research team was able to probe into the inner structure of a photosynthetic complex. They fired 3 successive pulses of laser light into it, which generated a light signal which was then picked up by a detector. If there really was coherence among the excitons, they should be able to see interference between the different pathways, a so-called quantum beat. The leading author on the paper, Greg Engel, spent the entire night stitching together the data and found exactly what he was looking for. A rising and falling signal, like the interference pattern produced when waves interfere. In other words, this quantum beat showed that the exciton wasn't taking a single route through the chlorophyll maze, but was following multiple routes simultaneously. This was a huge shock to the scientific community. The MIT physicists were forced to admit that they may have laughed too soon. Numerous experiments have been performed since then, confirming this result. However, the story is far from over. Although this quantum beat keeps showing up, there's still debate over how to interpret it. Some experts in the field think that the beats are caused by molecular vibrations, not coherence. Others think the observed coherence was too small in amplitude to have originated in excitons, and then there are others who think that this quantum beat is in fact direct evidence for quantum biological processes. Let's just say there are mixed vibes. Research is still going on to understand how photosynthesis is so efficient and may lead to insights to create quantum computers and other technologies. Quantum biology is an amazing area of research, rich with possibilities. This video was about the biological processes that plants use, but what about the processes that govern our own bodies?
So here's the theory of this presentation. True UFOs are like chlorophyll. Could you believe that was where we were heading? You never foresaw that happening, right? Well, they are, because UFOs occupy space on Earth, like plants do, but access the ability to operate outside our law of physics. So plants are on Earth, but they are accessing the quantum physical laws, or the law of quantum physics, that are not subject to our law of physics, where in quantum physics a single photon of light can be in multiple places at one time, and that's how the plant processes out the photon and gathers virtually 100% of the energy from it. So that's what I'm going to try to show you today, from some actually video evidence of UFOs defying physics. And it's not what you're thinking. It's not just these pilots. Well, anyway, we're going to show you. So it's easier to show. In a short while, I'm going to show you a 3-minute video from Aguadillo, Puerto Rico from 2013, and it will show you what everyone describes as a USO, an underwater, an unidentified submersible vehicle. But previously it was flying, and then it goes into the ocean, doesn't lose much speed, comes back out, and it looks like it's split in two. And I'm going to suggest to you it's actually, the split is really the same object, but simply it's able to create a quantum version of itself. So it replicates itself, but it's really the same object, but exists in space a second time. and that can't work. That does not work in our physical universe, but it does work in a quantum physical state. And I'm going to just break here and show you what I mean. In 2007, a groundbreaking study revealed in Scientific American that plants take a photon of the sunlight and basically replicate it or superimpose it simultaneously, that one photon, in numerous different locations on a sensor that is trying to extract all the energy from it. Normally, it would be impossible to extract all the energy of the photon very efficiently. We, with all our machinery and everything, our normal solar cells can only extract about 15-20% of sunlight's energy into a solar battery. But the plant is able to get virtually 100% efficiency, 97% plus efficiency. And as this article is entitled, "When it comes to photosynthesis, plants perform quantum computation." That's what it means. All right, so today is November 25, 2022. So just a little over a month ago, on October 14, 2022, an article appeared in Live Science, a very major news journal, and it's entitled "Plants Use Quantum Physics to Survive." And I just want you to see how it's summarized here, okay? And they call it "The Bizarre Rules of Quantum Mechanics." And it says here, humans can't teleport. That means you can't be here and then transfer yourself to somewhere else in a distant place, or reside in multiple places at once. So you couldn't be physically here and in the teleported location simultaneously. But the tiniest particles of matter can in photosynthesis. And as it says here, these eerie quantum effects have traditionally been studied and observed only under the strictly controlled conditions of a physics lab. And we've shown that to you already, where you have to wear these uniforms, protective garbs, and have to be extremely cold, and clean rooms and all this stuff to try to effectuate the same type of thing. But then it says here, that is until some scientists suggested that such weirdness also exists in the wet and soggy biological systems. So this is the reality of the plants, and they are using superimposition. And so I'm going to show you again this video from Aguadillo, Puerto Rico, where you're going to see an aircraft moving through space split in two once it goes in the water and comes out. All right? So pay attention. It's a video. I originally had something from the History Channel, but it got disqualified, so I couldn't use it. So I've had to replace it with a public domain type version of this, but it's a government aircraft flying, and I'm going to narrate it as it goes. And somebody had written subtitles, so I'll read those as they go. But it's an official government video. It was released through the Department of Homeland Security, and it's a thermal video. And the History Channel said, they had all their experts look at it, and they said this is actually the real deal, and it's a true mystery of how it's split in two. Now, that's how they described it, and I'm going to explain it as I think it's a superimposition of the same aircraft twice in space, and that's exactly how a quantum particle works. And so we'll take a look at that theory. Okay, so here is the video, the public domain video. So I'm going to start it up here. A video showing a UFO coming out of the sea. Now, that's not at this point. They're just giving you a headline. And apparently splitting in two is alleged to belong to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Now, that's been confirmed. The History Channel agrees. That's no dispute. And it looks like a cylindrical, round object just moving through space with no visible means of propulsion or hold on. I want to read this off to you. It claims the footage was captured by a DHS aircraft. It was a government plane. It was looking to intervene if there was drug smuggling out in the ocean, that kind of thing, off the coast of Puerto Rico. So it's recording this and using a thermal imaging camera to see, are there life forms and so on. And basically, it according to the History Channel version of this, it found out the temperature of the aircraft is no different than a cow. So it's not, and it does not have a heat signature of an aircraft, which would have jet engines and be, 10, 20 times hotter, or many thousands of times hotter than 105 degrees Celsius. I think they were saying it would be if it were a cow. Cow's apparently very hot. So anyway, so there you go. Now let's get back to the video. And apparently, by the way, the video is like 30 or 40 minutes long. So this is going on and on and on. It's being tracked by thermal imaging, so it's locked on to the heat signature of this particular object. It says at the bottom, they claim they were given the thermal video by an official source. So it is a thermal video. In the footage, the UFO flies at high speed past the screen. The SCU, that's a group that looks into UFOs, says the image could not be a drone, a bird, balloon, or another aircraft. I think they mean by drone, it can't be a human-sourced drone. This is beyond our technology. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but it looks like a harbor, and these are ship masts, and this thing actually flies between the ship masts. So it's and it's relatively small. So I don't know if you can spot it. It's over here, and it's going to go behind one of these. It's one of a mast that's in front of it. So they just said this thing is, it seems to be intelligently controlled so that it can not hit things. So I'm going to pick up from that point. So they, again, back to what it says. The SCU says the image could not be a drone, bird, balloon, or another aircraft. And so it passed one of those poles, and it just seems to be able to avoid hitting things. Now it's heading out to sea, by the way. That's where it's heading. It's over, streets and regular objects. And then at some point it's going to pass some cows, and that's when they were able to compare its heat signature against cows, and it was within 3 degrees of a cow. So it's not using any very powerful engines like a aircraft, yet it's going pretty fast. And it had certain metrics on the borders. Now those metrics are being cut out, but in the History Channel they said the metrics seem real, to be real. They're telling you where it is, and now it's over the sea, and now it disappeared. Now where is it? It's still tracking its heat sensors. It's going to pick it up again. There it goes. So it went in the water. It's going in again. Now it's coming. So it came out of the water. Now went back in the water. Now it's gone in the water a couple of times, but now it comes out as 2. How did that happen? About the only conventional explanation that might fit the bill is that this is some new drone. How does it split into 2, though? But the entry and exit from the sea and the apparent splitting in 2 of the object makes even this explanation seem unlikely. That's one of the experts who said that. So yes, that is the remarkable aspect of the Aguadillo, Puerto Rico thing. The entry and exit from the sea multiple times, and the second or third time it comes out of the water, it splits into 2. How does that happen? Well, it's the very fact we said it's split into 2. It presupposes something that could be true in our universe, or we could even imagine it was 2 things joined and somehow they separated. So I'm going to stop the video now, and we'll comment as we go. But what I'm saying is it's a superimposition of the same object twice in our physical realm as a quantum physical effect. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, so we saw a government video with experts reviewing it conclude that this is an object with a normal heat signature, the same amount of heat that a cow would expel, and it's flying, and it goes in the water. It comes back out of the water and splits in 2. That does not follow the laws of the physics of our universe. Now, what could explain something that splits in 2? Maybe it was one craft and then splits into 2. But then how does it maintain momentum? Because if you were flying a single unified object, how could you split into 2 equal objects? and not lose momentum or destroy yourself. I mean, it just doesn't follow our law of physics. But it can operate in our universe just like a plant operates in our universe, but inside of the plant, it's not obeying physics, and you're having superimposition. So, particles or the same particle can exist in multiple places physically at the same time. Could this be a type of superimposition we just saw with our own eyes, where the same object is now really the same object twice, and it's appearing in two physical locations in our dimension of space and time, even though it's just one object, but it can occupy two spaces simultaneously? Just a thought. Now I want to play a short clip from 60 Minutes talking about interviewing Dietrich and Fravor on their experience with the famous Tic Tac. Now, there's actually no video of their experience, so you have to listen carefully to what they're saying and then put the pieces together, and I'll be back after that. So
Did the thought of UFO enter your minds?
It was unidentified, and that's why it was so unsettling to us, because we weren't expecting it, because we couldn't classify it. But what I want to be really careful of here is that we don't jump to conclusions, right? That we don't sensationalize this or,
Little green men.
little green men or extraterrestrial.
You're seeing something that defies explanation.
Right,
Very much.
yes.
It was November 2004, and the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was training about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. The advanced new radar on a nearby ship, the USS Princeton, had detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich, each with a weapons system officer in the back seat, were ordered to investigate and found an area of whitewater in an otherwise calm blue sea. It appeared to them that an object about the size of a 737 was just under the water.
So as we're looking at this, her backseater says, "Hey, Skipper, do you?" And about that got out, I said, "Dude, do you see that thing down there?" And we saw this little white Tic Tac looking object, and it's just kind of moving above the whitewater area.
Do you ever drop your phone and it sort of bounces off the countertop and then bounces off something else, and then it's sort of like no predictable movement, no predictable trajectory.
Yeah.
I guess it was just
It was just like a ping pong ball.
no acceleration.
Very, very random.
Acceleration.
As Dietrich circled above, Fravor went in for a closer look. So you're sort of spiraling down?
Yep. The Tic Tac's still pointing north-south. It goes "Plop," and just turns abruptly and starts mirroring me. So as I'm coming down, it starts coming up.
So it's mimicking your moves.
Yeah, it was aware we were there. I want to see how close I can get. So I go like this, and it's climbing still. And when it gets right in front of me, it just disappears.
Disappears.
Disappears. Like gone.
And you saw no visible propulsion, no
No.
wings or anything to
No.
make it fly in our atmosphere?
No, actually, when it turned and started coming up, it was kind of like, okay, because we have nothing that goes that fast and just starts climbing at will.
Seconds later, the Princeton reacquired the target 60 miles away.
So in a matter of...
Like that.
Yeah, it just appeared there.
In seconds.
Yeah.
It was 60 miles away. Later, another flight crew encountered what they believed to be the same object and briefly locked onto it with a targeting camera before it zipped off again.
They didn't get a visual on it, but they did get this FLIR
video.
footage, the forward-looking infrared.
So you've got the infrared image
Right.
Yes.
and your eyesight
Yes.
and the Princeton
The radar.
all saying there is something out there.
Yes.
The Princeton had been tracking the anomalous objects for days. Dietrich says they were unarmed.
You know, I felt the vulnerability of not having anything to defend ourselves, to not having any rounds, anything on the rails. If this was in fact a hostile threat, and we were engaged, I felt vulnerable, and then I felt confused when it disappeared.
Dietrich says she briefed superiors about what they all saw. In no time, the story of their encounter spread quickly.
Rumors like that spread within seconds. I would say with less than 30 minutes, the entire ship knew this happened.
And what was the reception like?
Actually thought it was kind of funny and started
Yeah.
giving us a lot of grief.
Ridicule.
Yeah,
Ridicule.
yeah.
Yeah. They made cartoons, and on the ship's TV, they played Men in Black and Independence Day and Signs.
Signs.
So
And
they made fun of it.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Did anybody take it seriously?
Yeah, I believe the Admiral staff made a few phone calls.
Now, what I think is significant from Dietrich and Fravor's report is we can now add 3 more interesting criteria. So we already saw that a UFO can defy physics by splitting into 2 objects from a single object. Now, number 2, though, we know that there can be flight with no visible means of propulsion nor airfoils. So literally, it has no energy supply. It's not moving by any energy that exhibits heat in great amounts of physical heat, and we saw that with the other object too. And yet it does have some heat signature, but nothing extraordinary either. And so there's no propulsion system that you can see. You don't see any, flames coming out of the back of an engine or anything. It has no obvious engine, and nor does it have any airfoils. So it is not using any of the dynamics of flight to stay in the air. Somehow it is able to pick out its path that it wants to go. And then number 3, it has instantaneous acceleration. So it is as no physical limitation and can accelerate at extremely high speeds and go in 60, let me see, but not 60, 80,000 feet in 2 seconds. That's how fast this thing can accelerate from the ocean, above the ocean to 80,000 feet. So it went beyond them at some point in time. So it went all the way up in the air in a matter of 2 seconds. And then it went 60 miles away in a matter of 1 second, just a matter of 1 or 2 seconds. So, I mean, this thing has instantaneous acceleration to a high rate of speed that is extraordinary and is not obeying the law of physics. And in fact, what they'll tell you, if there is an actual occupant, these aren't drones of some higher intelligence, whoever in the physical universe that we live in, the body would be destroyed because you would not be able to handle the G forces. So either it's a drone or these are able to just operate at extraordinary G forces with no effect on the body because they're not subject to our law of physics. And what's also interesting is I think it's really not paid attention to a lot, but Fravor is saying that as he is descending in a corkscrew down, it's a normal pattern for F-18s to go after something. It can't fly straight down. It has to fly in a corkscrew down. This object knew where it would meet him face to face and came up straight up to that point right in front of his face. And I mean, he was being modest and not trying to tell you. He knew what was happening. He knew he was going to confront this thing, and he didn't care. Is really but he didn't want to sound like a hero either. He just said, I knew, we're going to come right at it. And but what he meant is, as far as he knew, he was going to crash into it. But it right at the moment that it came face to face, it just disappears. That's an instantaneous acceleration, or really a disappearance act, if you think about it. So he said it just disappeared. So how does that happen? So an object that's in space right in front of him disappears. And so people don't pay attention to that either. They act like, well, but at the same time, it reappeared 60, I got to check again, 60 miles away in a matter of 1 to 2 seconds. So that means an extraordinary acceleration. So this thing doesn't obey any law of physics or dynamics, aerodynamics, nothing. How does that happen? And it's in our universe. And it's seen by professionals who are paid lots of money to be good observers. And they're in our military. And this is not something you can see. They get ridiculed. They don't get a reward. They don't get treated as royalty. They're like mocked. And the Men in Black comes on the movies at night. So to make fun of them. So it's not something you actually feel comfortable doing. And Dietrich wouldn't even come out until she left the service. That's how she felt about it. So she felt this was just, not gonna advance her career, so she didn't bother having to come forward. But now after she's left the military, she's come forward and she's made her own statements, and you saw that was her first statement publicly, I think. Fravor had been on the talk circuit, but she hadn't. And to see her come out and confirm what he said is very important, because people might say, "Oh, Fravor was, getting some popularity and notoriety. He was enjoying it, obviously, the attention he was getting. He was on Joe Rogan and all that. But here's the girl and the young lady, the woman in the back, and she's on right, but it's the same experience he's having simultaneously. We didn't hear from her until this episode, and that was great confirmation that he was telling us the same truth. And then another thing, I didn't put it down here, but it was very interesting about the ping pong effect. So when they first see it, it's ping ponging from spot to spot to spot. And as I hear that, and I couldn't really grasp what that might mean, but think about the quantum physics effect of a photon. That photon, when it comes in, is basically sent in all different directions simultaneously. So it's existing in multiple spots. Is it possible that somehow the aircraft is able to simultaneously look, to our naked eye, it would look like it's ping-ponging. But what if it's really a quantum mechanical effect where it's in all these different spots simultaneously, but the human eye just sees it in one spot at a time, because that's all we can track. Our ability to see things can't track things maybe that are moving so fast, or going from spot to spot so quickly. It looks to us like they're moving in a ping pong effect. So I'm just speculating, I don't know, but it just says to me, this has a lot of mimicry of what we just learned about the quantum physics of a plant. So you have a plant is able to exceed the law of physics on this planet, yet it's on this planet. These ships, these UFOs, are exceeding the law of physics. They're able to split in two. They're able to fly with no visible means of propulsion or airfoils. They're able to have instantaneous acceleration of extraordinary speed. They can literally track the descent of another aircraft and track it to the perfect point and then disappear at the exact moment to avoid a crash. And then they have these ping pong effects, which is hard to understand or explain in any universe that I know of. So this is what would indicate that there is another dimension, just like the ant can't see there's another dimension. It just sees this flat surface that it works on, and when that's occupied, it feels like it has nowhere to go. That's how we are. We are on a flat surface, and these objects, these UFOs, are in another plane of existence that we don't operate on. The plant is in another plane of existence that our solar panels are nowhere get near the efficiency level of the plants that are just this natural object that exists on planet Earth, and without which life would never have existed, let alone, quote, evolved. So this is a magic chlorophyll thing, No, it's a supernatural. The chlorophyll to me is a supernatural object. Did not come out of our universe. It started in another universe, has all the properties that still are in common with that other universe. And so anyway, back to our story here. So what is this universe? What does this prove about the UFOs? Well, I think what it proves is that God told us there's other beings that he made that were called angels. And more than likely, these angels have developed civilizations. If they could procreate with females on our planet, doesn't it stand to reason they could have created civilizations, a way to maybe create robot versions of themselves? These aircraft are highly advanced. Don't you think this culture has robots? Do you think maybe the robots are able to operate drones and do these flight maneuvers that we're seeing? Although Dr. Ross has the opinion that basically it's a demonic thing, and I think he's wrong, and here's why. Just I want to point this out. He was saying that people who are into witchcraft and demonology, and they're they follow demons, and they're demonic, they seem to have more experiences than other people of the seeing UFOs. Well, but that doesn't explain. That may explain a lot of sightings. That if you're into witchcraft and demon stuff, you may see the demonic side. Okay, but these are videos that are actually videos, and so you can see them, and you're not into demons, and you're not possessed, and you're not into witchcraft, and you're seeing the videos. Everybody can see the videos. So these videos are objective facts. They don't depend on my, what my thoughts are about witchcraft or about anything. It's just they are what they are. So it's obviously doesn't depend upon the subjective outlook of the persons who are looking at it. Anybody can see it. It's physical reality. So I love Dr. Ross, but I don't think he's correct on that. And then he says it's all dangerous and don't look into it. Well, I actually look at it a different way. I see the miracle that what looks like miracles to us, because they're violating the law of physics. And while instead of being threatened by that, that tells me and reconfirms that what I see and what we can all see with plants is real. It is a real suspension of the law of physics within our universe in a small plant and bacteria. How can that be? Because this is the way God made the universe. There are doorways into God's realm of heaven, and his heaven has a doorway into our universe. And these angels have ways into our universe and cross over. And they have not been acting malevolent. And they look like they have powers that could just snuff us out in a heartbeat. I mean, think about it. They want to destroy us. These beings could do so. They seem to be, I don't want to say, yeah, they seem to be so far friendly. Okay. I mean, they're scary and scare people. And I think that Tic Tac that came up right into the nose of Fravor was sort of challenging Fravor. So that to me is a little bit of, maybe he's playing or toying with him like a kid might do. And so it was a little, but a little on the aggressive side. So I just want to put a footnote is like, you can't be 100% sure, but it could have killed him, could have just blown right through him if it wanted to, but it didn't. It just disappeared at the last second, kind of freaking him out a little bit. But maybe they knew he's the kind of guy who doesn't get freaked out. He's an aircraft captain. I mean, excuse me, an Air Force captain. He's just impervious. So they probably could read his mind that the guy's not going to get frightened to death or, capsize, get a heart attack or something. So, but anyway, there is that possibility that they're not, that they are malevolent, so I'm not saying, but that's not the point. The point is, this should give us some confirmation of what was Jesus doing. Jesus was stepping in and out of the other dimension. Heaven is another dimension of space and time. It exists. It's a place. It really has a physical reality to it. God is spirit, but the heaven has its own reality. This could be the place where angels live. We're not precisely ever told they live in heaven, but they like when Satan was a good angel, he could go up to heaven and he could visit heaven. So maybe you have to be introduced into heaven. Maybe there's compartments where God allows angels to enter, but angels live somewhere else. I mean, God never goes into great detail with us about where the angels live vis-a-vis where he lives and so on. So these are undetermined yet. But to me, it's a great encouragement. The UFOs don't scare me like it does Dr. Ross. But of course, if people are into demonology or witchcraft or something like that, they're gonna be contacting demonic spirits, and so you have to be careful. So UFO studies have people who are interested in it from that viewpoint, and they're into that. I'm looking for where's the good potentially in the reassurance that God's is still in control of our universe, and these maybe his good angels are looking over us, and they actually have crafts and stuff. I mean, it's possible, and they haven't done anything bad or mean or rotten to us yet. And in fact, they seem to be They showed us the ability to turn on and off our nuclear weapons, and they were just sending a message maybe to the militaries of the world. We can shut down your nuclear weapons when we want to. I don't know if you know those stories. So, I mean, a lot of people think that their intention is benevolent. Okay, so what have we established? We've established that in nature and in UFOs, there's some evidence of there being other dimensions that explain how you can have laws of physics suspended in in our world that we experience, where where ships can split into two or appear to be in two places at one time, is what I really think that is. Quantum physics of a plant, it seems to have the photons that it's absorbing are in multiple places all at one time, and that's how the plant extracts all the energy and gets virtually 100% efficient extraction of energy. So if you have other dimensions that makes sense of all of that quantum physical effect, then Jesus stepping into locked rooms in John 20 verses 19 to 29, it's a miracle because it defies the laws of physics of our universe, but it is permissible physics in another dimension of our universe. You see, so that's kind of but in our universe, it's a complete miracle. In this other dimension, it's normal. And so, just an idea that I'm throwing out there. Be interested what other people think. Does the UFO mystery prove there is another dimension? And that's where these craft are coming from. They're in our space and time zone. And one last thing I want to make a point, maybe I didn't make it as clear, is Dr. Ross makes a very good point that any nearest galaxy or place that would have a planet like ours that could have life is so distant away that the travel essentially is impossible, even if you had warp capability. And he says that's not really even physiologically possible, but anything's possible theoretically. But if you could even get to light speed, by the time you got here, if you're a normal being of some sort of normalcy, you would be long dead and you would have been burned out, and your culture couldn't have equipped itself and advanced for that kind of length of a trip. It has all kinds of reasons why you can just discount this idea that a culture on another planet is coming here in any reasonable time frame. At least 2,000 years would have to pass, even at even at warp speeds. So, yeah, we have a completely misunderstood idea by watching Star Trek of how easy it would be to move from planet to planet and, move across the universe. It's just not that way. So what that made me think is, when we see all these things and we are thinking it's an alien culture coming from outer space, like far, far distant planets, that's not really it. They're in our same space and time, but they can be unseen because of where they are in another dimension. And so unless they step and cross the barrier between us and them, and there seems to be a barrier. Jesus talks about a barrier. Also remember that, where there's a barrier between heaven and hell. And so God can set up barriers. That doesn't mean God can't open the barriers for certain people to come and go in and out of things. Maybe that's what happened with Enoch. Maybe he went up into heaven and he crossed the barrier. That's maybe what, you could almost imagine Jesus when he ascended into heaven. We're not told that he walked up some stairs that were not visible, but he basically just walked away and kept going up, 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 up. And they call it an ascension. But what he's really doing, he's walking on something he can see, but nobody else, the humans on the ground cannot see. And he's just walking away. So, there's all kinds of possibilities that we don't understand because, of course, we don't understand. We don't know for sure. And so some of this is speculative, but I'm saying I think we're seeing clues that tells us that UFOs and the quantum physics of plants are connected, because we can see physical effects in our universe, and with Jesus, all three things are connected: the UFOs, the quantum physics of photosynthesis, and Jesus being in a locked room, all have the same common denominator, which is you get these possibilities with extra dimensions of space, and it doesn't require the UFOs are coming from other planets. They're literally in our space and time. It's just we can't see them because they're not in the same dimension that we are. and so they're walking on a different dimension. And by the way, many people say, God, well, how can God see backwards in time, and how can he see forward in time? Because he can be walking on a different plane. In other words, walking is just a way of talking, personifying what he's doing, but meaning he can travel along a line of time that we can't. We're finite. We cannot move into the future, but God can. He can see the future, and the future apparently, can be on a line for him, but for us, that dimension is closed off to us. We cannot see and and walk into the future. We can only experience the present. So it's just a bit, the universe is fascinating if you think about what's possible. So anyway, I hope everybody, this was edifying and helpful to understand this text, and that this is encouraging. I'm not afraid of good angels. I'm looking forward to their helping the victory of Christ and God over the evil in the as the book of Revelation depicts. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's think positive about that, and but yet be on guard against any evil angels, and that's well and good as well. Okay, everybody. So God bless. Take care. Ciao. Bye.